Good morning, this is Rich. Welcome to my quiet time. After exchanging comments with a woman last night and this morning who's in a storm of her own, I was sharing some of my story of how God has brought the most important woman in my life into my life and the storm that we are currently in. And she's been in a storm since the 80s. And I've been in a storm since I was born. Oh my word. But I was sharing some of the story about my wife and how we met and married and had children and so forth. And I was thinking I should make videos that share about love, our love, my love for her and our life. And it's helped me have some more scales fall from my eyes. More lies that the enemy has put in my mind that has poisoned my heart. Questioning my wife's love for me. And thinking about and being reminded of the sacrifices my wife has made for our marriage and our lives has removed yet another scale from my eyes. My first solid concrete picture or image in my mind of the woman who became my wife, even with a man that vowed at 20 years old he'd never date again. See, I was so broken emotionally inside of me that I just couldn't take any more pain. So I vowed I'd never date again. After I got married, my wife and I dated. 95% of the time, she initiated the dates. Because I was still such a mess. But my first concrete memory of her is the day she drove into the parking lot at church as I was heading out. It was the day that she was diagnosed with a second bout of cancer, meaning more surgery, more radiation, and to face and to do battle with more fear, or to not allow it even to come into your heart again. That is my first solid concrete memory, probably because it was so powerful and so painful. And so her story about this is very interesting, painful. It's a testimony worth sharing. So I'm going to share my part of it. So August, which I declare normally to be the worst months of my life. It was the month I was born. It was traumatic. And so many Augusts afterwards I've viewed as being the worst months of my life. Well, that August was the start of God bringing somebody into my life and finally into my heart. The woman that I love, the woman I married, the woman who is the mother of my children, the mother of all of our children, and the mother of our son-in-law now. The stable one in our relationship, our family, had to become a foundation all herself for our family because myself, was so broken that I was not a foundation somebody could build their life on or trust, because my foundation was not Christ. I had Christ. I had hell insurance. I was going to heaven, but I would have got there and been such a mess. If I got there in the state I have been in before November of 2020, excuse me, time's going quick. I would have got into heaven and got there and everybody would have been like, you're here, but did you bring anything? Because I would have had nothing to bring, at least in my eyes. But God has a plan, rich in mercy and grace, forgiveness. And He's changing the path that I've been on. And I hope and pray He changes many others. So that was August of 99. I think it was December of 99, we went down to Brownsville Assembly of God. And there was a pastor's conference down there. I, since after Christmas Eve of 98, had opened my mouth and volunteered at the church I was going to. It was 7 blocks away from where I was living, and I told myself, I said, if I can't make it 7 blocks to church, I'm just not committed enough, not serious enough. See, I was still very broken at the time. And so I started working at the church on top of my 40 hours that I was doing at my career. And I was supposed to do about 10 hours a week, and I was probably doing 20 to 30, and I didn't have a life. That was my life. And so jokingly, I went to this pastor's conference as the quote-unquote maintenance pastor. Women weren't on my radar. I had vowed I'd never date again. I still carried that vow until November of 2020. God kind of got me to forget about it after I got married. But it sat there, contaminating and polluting my heart as I went through life. So at this conference, it was 4 guys from church, the youth pastor, his name was Aaron, a friend of mine at the time, John, and another guy from church, Dean, and myself. And we shared a hotel room, and there was 3 queen-size beds, maybe king or queen. And I shared my bed with the youth pastor, Aaron. I said, okay, here, you sleep under the sheets. I run warm. I'll sleep under just the bedspread, the top cover. And hilarity ensued. Remember, I think it was the first night, I was laying in bed and I kind of slid my arm over the side and I bumped his arm and I'm like, I felt skin. You're not under the sheets. And we all laughed. Or there was the time that Dean was snoring. He had sleep apnea. And I woke up very grumpily. I was like, stop snoring. And everybody woke up. He stopped snoring and we all laughed again. But across the hall from us was this young single mother. Her name's Melody. I didn't know a lot about her. It wasn't really on my radar. I mean, I had shields up, like 1,000 layers deep. I'd been hurt very bad in my teenage years. It's because of my own doing. I was broken. But when we flew down for this trip, I was the one who rented a car, and I turned into a chauffeur. And my friend John was making a move on Melody. And I didn't know John super well, and I didn't have a good track record of picking quality friends. But Dean saw some warning signs and stepped in to try to protect Melody. John didn't have good intentions, I guess. I didn't know about it until later, much later. I wish Dean would have shared with all of us so we could have all known to step in and protect her. But even though I was not interested in her, in any sort of a romantic or dating relationship, because I wasn't going to date ever again. I did care about her as a sister in Christ, and God brought that to the surface. The good in me. Unfortunately, most in me was evil, or at least damaged, poisoned by the knowledge of good and evil in life, and being mistreated, and generational sin, generational bondage, strongholds. But on this trip, I came to see some things about Melody that drew out from inside of my heart the caring and concerning person. Whether it was this 105-pound gal that needed to eat every 2 to 3 hours, and I became attentive to it and responded to it. Or the time the five of us were sitting in a diner very, very late at night down in Florida, place I didn't know. I don't know how safe it is, but she got up to leave the table to use the restroom. At least I found that out afterwards, but I just saw her get up from the table, the five of us. I didn't hear her tell any of us where she was going, what she was doing. But I saw her walking away from our group, and I was like, that doesn't look safe. I didn't say anything to anybody. I just got up and I secretly escorted her to the restroom because I knew she had 2 young children at home, and I didn't want anything to happen to her because I knew these kids needed her. I didn't know a whole lot about her story, but I knew some. And also, I had a thought or an image in my mind of standing back in the pastor's office with 3 other guys, hearing from him, "Guys, how dare you let something happen to that sister in Christ, to that young mother?" Because that's what I was thinking at the time. But also something else happened during that time. So I escorted her way back to the back of this diner, very dark, secluded, and didn't look safe at all. I don't know if there was a rear door that somebody could have grabbed her and taken her away. But I wanted to make sure that didn't happen. And then after she went into the restroom, I'd kind of looked around and was like, wow, there's Journey playing on the speaker above me. Really deeply, passionately am moved by songs like that, emotional love songs, but also inside deathly fearful and insecure about anybody hearing me singing, because I didn't feel good about almost everything I did. But I kind of, so to speak, let my Steve Perry hair down, which I don't have, and quietly sang outside the bathroom. And then the bathroom door suddenly moved, and I was like, mute. Singing instantly stopped. And out she came, and she's like, "Why is the car guy out here?" Because I was known for fixing cars and helping people at church with cars. And then she's like, "And he's singing?" It's like, uh-oh, oops. No insulation in the walls. Uh-oh. Inside, I was panicking and freaking out. But then we just went back to our group and we continued our trip. And after we got back from the trip, my friend at the time, John, asked me if I was interested in Melody. And I was like, I have no interest in dating anybody. I mean, I had a desire. I longed to be loved and cared for, and married, maybe have children and all those things. But I was so broken, I didn't see that ever happening. And eventually Melody saw John for who he was, and that ended, and all I was doing was serving at the church, and all Melody was doing was taking care of her children to the best of her ability. And she was on worship team, and she was doing Sunday school. And I was doing my ministry, my unofficial car repair ministry, and helping do maintenance at the church. But somehow one night, this was after Christmas. I think at Christmas I went over to her place and hung Christmas lights on the house. And for Christmas I gave her 2 children, our 2 children. Now, but back then, her 2 children, a 10-gallon fish tank aquarium. And I can't even remember what inspired me to do that. I don't know, maybe I heard something about goldfish, goldfish bowl or something. And thought she needed a real aquarium. Although, 10 gallons not much, but a little countertop one. And we had one in the house for a long time. And but just helping and serving at church. And I think I think it was Christmas, after the Christmas Eve service at church. We had gone there to clean the wax off the backs of the chairs. They had fabric chairs. And I said, if we got an iron and some paper towels, we could heat and melt the wax with the irons and have the paper towels absorb the wax. And so we were doing that. And something happened one time, and she was saying something, and I was like, hold on. What did you just say? I said, it kind of sounded like you said we're in some sort of relationship. And I said, well, if we are, I said, I'm not dating. I won't date you. I said, I'll court you, which I felt was my view of a Christian or biblical pre-marriage relationship. I didn't want to live the world's way, in the church, out of the church. And within 30 days, I said to her one night, I was like, wow, this is real. And she kind of, stepped back. I was like, no, I said, I'm not proposing to you. I'm not giving you a ring. And, but I said, I'm just letting you know that I realize that what's going on here is real and that God has brought us together. And within 6 months, we were engaged, and we got married October 14th of 2000. November, she would have no longer had her spousal support from her ex-husband and only had child support for the kids. And so as we talked about it, I was 34 years old. She was 36 years old. And, we had no need to be in a multi-year engagement and so forth. And then also I looked at the situation, and here she was. She had a house, and it was home to her 2 children from her first marriage. And it was a house she bought with her first husband. And personally, what man wants to move into a house that your new wife bought with her former spouse? Most people would say they don't. But it wasn't about me. Marriage isn't about me. It's about us. And I looked at her children, who would now be my children, and her, and I thought about these things. 1, her children didn't want their marriage to fall apart and end. Her children didn't want their mother to have breast cancer and surgeries and radiation and the uncertainty of how long she'd live. Her children didn't want her mom to marry some guy that God brought into her life, but she did. Her children didn't want to lose their home, the only stable place that they've known, if you know all their history. And so I did what was in their best interest. Even in my brokenness, I was doing a lot of things right, until life awakened the scars and wounds inside of me that I hid when I made this vow when I was 20. It started leaching out into my heart and my life. And God wanted that to happen because I didn't know how to get rid of it. And He helped me. So this is just a little bit about my history of how a broken, rejected, even self-rejecting man became a husband, and an instant father, stepfather, but father to his children that his wife had from her first marriage. And then God blessed us with 2 children together. And I'll share that in another video.